Hi, I'm Melissa Flores.
And I'm Meghan Camarena.
And you're on Comics Online.
Your face.
No, we're going to do it like this.
No,
Melissa? No?
Your talent now. We gotta figure
This
this
doesn't
out.
work?
First of all, congratulations on our panel yesterday. I think the audience response was very excited for more Hyperforce, adventures, and of course, with all the news coming out from Boom, you guys have a wonderful amount of storytelling to share with the reader soon.
Yeah, we're so happy to. I didn't realize until we got on the panel that except for our incredible moderator, it was all women on the panel, which I thought was really cool. I don't think that's ever actually happened before for a Power Rangers panel.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sick.
That was really fun. And yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff. So
Well,
it was fun to see it.
Let's jump into Hyperforce. Obviously,
Yes.
the book just came out. Audiences have been clamoring for more adventures for your team of Rangers for a while. Meghan, being the Pink Ranger in Hyperforce and now getting to write for it, let's talk about your experience of bringing Chloe to this medium. What can you share about that adventure?
What a dream come true, right? We totally thought we were going to get a season 2, and 5 years later to get to pick up that story right where it left off, all of those emotions that have just been pinned up inside me, get to release them on the page, is incredible. And I love working with Melissa. We're such a good team, and I love that character. I love that character so much, and I hold her so near and dear to my heart. To be able to open with her and share her side of the story and the hurt that kind of got looked over in the finale, which I'm not like bitter or anything. It's just in a role-playing game, whatever lives in the session is truth. So I have to act as my character based off of what happened or didn't. And I think after all this time, she'd be a little upset. So even though it's just like, it takes place 3 months later, I think, right?
I think 6.
6 months? Yeah. Not good at math. But it's 5 years later for me. But right when we started writing, it just felt like, like time didn't even pass. It was just so natural and so easy. So
It was like shockingly easy to get back into it, and thankfully it's because of the fans. They gave us such incredible tools because there was so much love for Hyperforce. We had this incredible creator called Rovang who runs a Power Ranger timeline.
it is
And
incredible.
he literally went through every episode and time-stamped every time somebody did like something interesting or every time
It
like
just beat
any
by
event
beat.
happened. Yeah, and then these amazing 2 creators, one called Esme and George, Este and George put together like a Hyperforce 101 kind of video, and
Caught us back up.
yeah,
so
and
sweet.
caught us back up and we had to because it's 25. Like if we had sat there and watched 25 episodes, 3 hours each, we would have been there forever.
Ooh,
So
we
to
loved
be
them,
able,
so.
yeah, to be able to go back in and get those little details that we might have that we needed to importance,
Yeah,
like
a
what
little
does the
refresher.
Vatterizer look like? What does the North Pole look like? What is Squeezy? Is Squeezy's name Squeezy or Scuzzlebutt? Like what's the name?
Yeah.
Like it was so nice to be able to just jump back in and really live in that world again.
It's beautiful because the fans have made these things because they're trying to get other people on board with Hyperforce. They know it's like, it's a lot to take in, but they're like, hey, let's make it bite-sized. And I bet they never imagined they were going to be helping us out.
Yeah, I
All
really
these years
appreciate
later.
it. Yeah.
Well, we're friends with George as well, so we know how much love he's put into
support,
this.
yeah.
So very excited that you were able to incorporate them into the universe.
We
Yeah.
actually made...
There's 2 guards, yeah.
there's 2 guards in the beginning that we modeled after them.
Yeah, and they're so excited. I don't know if you've been able to see. They're
No,
like
I
they're
haven't.
so happy. Like George even made a little action figure of himself. He was so happy.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I
he
love
was
that.
really thrilled.
So let's talk about your unique experience because unlike most of the Rangers, that have their characters written for them, you got to essentially create Chloe and give her life and a voice. Now translated to this medium, it's a different experience, I'm sure, but just more, you get to have a little bit more creative control of where your Ranger comes from.
Yeah.
And could you talk just more about like the impact for getting to give Chloe, that semblance of life and taking her in a direction that you as a creator get to have some say?
Yeah. As a writer versus a player, it was always really nice working with Melissa and Zach and Malika. They were very hands-off. We had our outline and then Ranger roles to stick to, but in terms of character development, that was really, I got to do that. So writing, Melissa and I always bumped on this. I was like, Chloe's going to be bad. And Melissa's like, no, she can't be bad. She's a Ranger. I'm like, watch her. she's gonna do it. I bet you she'll do it. Like, you can't tell me what my character would do. And this, when we started writing, I was like, you have to let her be bad.
Well, we
She
came to a
needs
good compromise about it. Yeah.
Thank goodness. I was like, there's no way. Like, 'cause I think that was the first time we kind of had like one of these moments where like, I gotta be bad for a little bit. And they're like, well, this is how it would work. And I'm like,
We
I
had
love it.
one moment of that in Radiant Pink. I remember, like at issue 5, I was like, "This doesn't work." She's like, no,
issue
it
5,
does.
Issue 5 was
Yeah.
hard though.
That was and so so we had already had that kind of practice already, where it's like, okay, how will it work for the both of us? And I think we found a really good way for Chloe, because like definitely we want to address her trauma and her truth, and it's a really good way to bring a general audience into the world through Chloe, because she's such a relatable character.
Well, she's such a polarizing, like, to see her be bad and potentially almost, assassinate someone in the first couple of pages, spoiler, is like, well, what
especially
happened?
Jen Scott's, who like she's
Her
low-key in
hero.
love with.
Yeah,
you know?
like, honestly, let's be real. But like,
Yeah.
the audience needed to know that Chloe was hurting that bad.
Yeah.
Like, she is going to a dark
She's
place.
going to go to these extreme measures to try and fix the wrongs, because she feels like she's such a screw up and she's all alone.
Yeah.
And it was a really great way. It was the right call to be able to bring this character in.
Because I think people were expecting the burrito-loving, happy, fun Chloe, and I wanted to peel that back. Because sometimes, like, how you present isn't always how you are. And there was a storm always brewing inside her. It just took something to kind of make it snap.
Yeah.
From a creative process, I know that you've worked together for Radiant Pink. Did this get worked on first, or was it Radiant Pink that you two were able to?
Semi-simultaneously, right?
Pink was first.
Yeah, Pink was first.
And then towards the end of wrapping up Pink, we were working on both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. I know it changes dynamics, of course, when you've got an original character versus someone that you're coming back to. So I didn't know if that changed your dynamics for breaking the story or breaking the characterization.
With Eva in Radiant Pink, her life is loosely based off of mine. So we're really pulling from a lot of my traumatic relationships and streaming trauma. So
plus, Eva was already created before I came on board. She created it with Kyle on episode 12. Issue 12?
12, yeah, of Radiant Black. But that's different. That's me. Chloe is like a different shade of me, an alternate universe kind of me. It's my Ranger character. So it was. I think we were able to step into it, and Melissa knows Chloe very well. I'm like, what? How'd you know I would do that? She's like, I know.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I'd been writing Power Rangers at least for a good few months by that point. So I knew the world really well. I knew the story, where it needed to go and where it needed to end in order to fit into the Darkest Hour event. And so really, it was just a matter of...
Well, the best person to be taking the helm of Power Ranger comics, this girl right here.
Well, I mean, thankfully, and I was so glad to have a co-writer like Megan to be on board, because Hyperforce, it's a big order. We have so many people that are so excited to bring it back, and we only get one shot at this.
40 pages is not enough.
Yeah.
But we made it work.
Yeah.
You fit a lot into 40 pages.
You have no idea.
We fit Santa, and that's what matters.
I was impressed that Santa made it. I mean, of the pieces that made the cut, the fact that you were able to do so many callbacks, so many Easter eggs, and just the nuances for the characterization, it came through in a stellar way, but just it was just impressive how much fit comfortably and organically. It didn't feel like it was just, okay, let's have this reference just to have the reference, but it's like, no, this is true to the characters. It's true to what you built with your role-playing game, and I think it's going to be nice for fans who waited patiently for more stories to experience.
I mean, for the North Pole, I love Christmas. It's my thing. I insisted we do a Christmas
1,000%.
episode, but also those were two of my favorite characters that Zach and Malika played. Was
when she brought it up, I was like, you have to.
And Santa. And so I really wanted to at least have them in the book impersonated in some way, and that felt like the best way to do it, and just because they were just such beautiful characters that they created that live in that world, and so that was really fun.
Yeah. There's a moment that I think is worth discussing is Pink Ranger Battleizer.
Yes.
Getting to see it.
Cool. I get chills every time it gets brought up, because in my mind, whenever I would battleize, I had an idea of what it looked like, and it was a bit of rainbows and sparkles in my brain as I was rolling, but we never had concept art for it. Never got to see it visually, and that's the first time it's a lot of things in Hyperforce have come to life, and battleizer was probably now I know what's a cosplay if I'm ever going to build that out.
Yeah.
But even seeing Chloe's bedroom on the Hyperforce ship, how cool. These are things you make up in your head, and to see them on a page just makes it that much more real.
Yeah, and all the credit goes to Federico Sabatini, who literally, every other Power Rangers artist is given reference material and that they can watch, and he just had stuff he could listen to. and he had, thankfully Malika gives incredible descriptions,
Yeah,
and
very
so
good.
and so that's what we gave him. But for him to be able to pull that and turn that into these amazing visuals that look so cool, like even the high heels on Chloe, I'm like, that's so extra, but Chloe would absolutely be like, high heels, yes, that's a thing. It was a lot of fun, and he was an amazing artist and the perfect partner for us to pair up with on this project.
But what did you think of the battleizer? Pretty cool.
Oh, I thought it was awesome.
Pretty cool.
So, I mean, that moment, you had so much, even just in those opening pages, of it set the tone. What I also appreciated, as I didn't get to experience the entire series as it was coming out, and I did go back and make sure that I got to experience it because I think it was an interesting concept.
Yeah.
But the recap for readers who weren't as familiar or didn't see every episode, there was enough content and context that it felt comfortable to continue on without having to stop and immediately go back and figure out who things were.
This feedback is so, it's like water. It's like after like having the driest mouth, this feedback feels like so cleansing and good because it was
a
a
struggle. Like, how do we not exposition-y? And how do we make it Hyperforce in tone?
How do we make people not want to throw the comic out the window in the
like,
first
I don't know who
page,
anybody is, and so it was tough because I knew there would be a learning curve for new people that didn't know Hyperforce, and but we also wanted to stay true to the people that had watched Hyperforce. So trying to find
that balance.
Yeah, and there's always a challenge when you're trying to put exposition in, so it doesn't feel like you're just getting an info dump, and so it was a challenge. It was hard, but it was worth it, I think.
Yeah, I had to like muscle test it. I'm like, if I'm reading it and I check out halfway through reading it, then like no one else is gonna read this, and I have a pretty short attention span.
Yeah.
So I feel like we got it pretty good. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah,
I also
did, like a Princess Bride joke in there, like.
I appreciated that it wasn't just previously on Power Rangers Hyperforce, but more within the context of the story where she's telling these people what happened and why she's about to do what she's about to do, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, what's going on?" And they're like, it helped to
Line
the line there was the narrative choices allowed it to move quickly and not feel that it was rushed, but more so allow you to get back to the fun and figure out what's happened since we last saw them.
Yeah, I really wanted the comedy to come out. Like,
it was
there's
a good call. That was Melissa.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know how we do this.
There's an incredible sketch that is with Nazi soldiers. It's like, are we the baddies? And like you have them talking, but there's skulls. Why do we have skulls? And so I really wanted those two characters, which again were inspired by fans, to really have that kind of vibe, especially when Chloe comes in, so that we're able to have this like really fun moment that's very irreverent that reminds us of Hyperforce before we dive into the darkness of what's actually happening.
Yeah, she needed to soften it because I originally I think wrote a couple of those opening pages a lot darker, and Melissa's like, can't do that. We totally can't do that. I'm like, oh man. I'm glad you're the expert because I'm not for sure how we even tackle this.
She wrote the we were responsible for different pages, and then we just went and like finessed them, the two of us.
Yeah.
But she did the medieval times episode pages.
So
and they were so.
stupid.
I remember just dying. There was like where Vesper was like.
There was so much more to that too.
Chloe was like, "You make everything so much more complicated," and Vesper's like, "You used to like that about me," and I'm like. Perfect. That's absolutely amazing. And it was a lot of fun to just read each other's work and really like pinball on what the tone should be at any given moment. And then to see that turn you see the trauma that was inflicted on Chloe right after that, like moments of irreverence, that felt very Hyperforce because it could get very comedic and also get very dark.
Yeah, I feel like we really paid tribute to it and wanted to give the fans like the best welcome home or send off that we could because it's been in our hearts this whole time.
I think it at least gave more of a semblance of closure, but still letting the story move on from where it had been. So, but to your point during the panel, it was an abrupt cliffhanger. Getting to experience it of I don't know what happened next. There was just so many shows, so many projects have that cliffhanger, unfortunately, and don't get a sense of closure. So I'm so happy that you both got to do that. But even more importantly, this book leads into The Darkest Hour as one of the two, of course, with the coinless. We got to see a little bit more of the Draken Rangers yesterday.
Yes. Did you see the Draken Rangers yet?
So I know everything. So don't ask me questions. I'm not good at this.
She spills stuff really fast.
So I should ask you all the questions.
No. I should probably just.
No, you're stuck here now.
So Darkest Hour, obviously, we've talked so much about what you've been building towards. Rita and now in Mistress Vile's form is one. Dark Spectre is coming, or at least has infected the grid. How did you build the framework for you as a writer to get to this point, or what were your behind the scenes movements that had to happen for you to feel comfortable launching The Darkest Hour?
I mean, thankfully, a lot of the work was already done for me because there's 100 issues of Power Rangers that were written, and thankfully I was there. Yeah, I was there for most of it because I was the executive on the other side that was listening to these pitches and developing these stories with these amazing writers. And so
the best person to pick it up, right? Like, what a dream.
So yeah, it was great because then there's things that I loved about every single run, and the easy part for me was just being like, well, what do I feel like I haven't gotten yet, and what's the best way to honor these issues? I think for me the most intimidating part was like 100 was such a perfect send off for Power Rangers, and I'm like, this, how do I crack it back open and make people feel like there's still more story to be told here? And for me, my way in was always going to be Rita. I love Rita. I love what the comics have done with Rita and her character and her backstory that Ryan did with her minions and with Eltar and with Zordon and having the morphing grid infused in her. And that truly was where I wanted to start. I'm like, what would Rita want to do? And then the other thing that I felt like had never been picked up again was this Dark Spectre threat that was teased in Unlimited. And what I really wanted to do was take every one of these one-shots and every one of these ongoings and be like, how do I put this all together to make it feel like it was all planned? Like this is what it's all been leading to. And that's kind of where it all became. I was like, how do I get Dark Spectre here? How do I feature Rita? Oh, she's infused with morphing grid magic. Perfect. How does she do this? She's mad at Zed. She needs to get a power up. What if Vile is not his name but a title? And I went there.
And we know she gets the Zeo crystal from the preview pages we saw. That was definitely an intense scene.
Yeah.
Could you talk about the lore elements that you were ready to play with, or the pieces that I guess were important to you as you were building that as well? Because I think the Zeo crystal as a concept, obviously we had Zeo Quest in the show, but there really wasn't much more of a backstory beyond we know that Zed at one point, there was the joke, of course, that his skin was flayed off when he went to go get it, but from a mythology standpoint, it really hadn't been explored that much in the show itself. And with comics, we've gotten more, but I would just love to hear about incorporating that aspect from the lore.
I mean, it's always just such a powerful piece of lore. It's this MacGuffin that you can really think about doing anything with. And what I love about the comics is that it's set up that there's a whole planet of Zeo crystals out there. This is just a shard, but only the purest of heart can get it. And if you get it and you're not pure of heart, what does that mean? What can you do with it? And we're seeing that now. We're seeing that with Rita, where she's taking the Zeo crystal that powered the Zeo Rangers, which, like, if you listen to the mythology and the lore, were they were meant to get stronger with time. Like, that was the whole point of the Zeos, Zeo Rangers. They were much more powerful than the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So how powerful is this thing?
Yeah.
And we answer that question. It's powerful enough to infect the morphin grid if used by somebody with morphin grid magic. So it's been fun.
Well, so any other surprises as far as building out to this point for you as a creator versus, I don't want you to spoil anything, I know you won't spoil, but is there anything that's shocked you while you were getting these pieces in place that you weren't expecting it to play out the way it did, and then once it was on page you're like, oh, okay, that actually couldn't have been more perfect?
Yeah, just being able to pull it off was great. No, for me, issue 104 was one that I truly just loved. It was so hard to write. I remember it was the Rita Repulsa, like how she became Mr. Smile issue.
Yeah.
And that
That's
one,
the one with that massive.
yeah.
Oh.
And that one, I remember like struggling so hard because 101, I felt like it was relatively easy for me to write. It felt like it came easy, but 104 felt like I was pulling blood from a stone. It was
so
just
much research.
It was just do. I had to, and there was things I wanted in there, like I love Diva Talks, and we're trying to look at the Vile stuff, and we want to talk about Rito, but we want it all to feel organic and in this world and make sense for Rita as a journey and a character, and so. It really it was so hard. I remember writing it and then having to rewrite it. Like, there was a couple ones. Like, usually, like, sometimes I'll, like, turn in a draft and Allison's like, perfect, great. There's other times when she's, like, got pages of notes. And I'm just like, oh, my God. And this was, like, I think I've done, like, 4 drafts on one script at some point. This one was one of those that was, like, 2 or 3 drafts where I was just like, by that point, I don't even know if it's good anymore.
Yeah, it kept changing. I remember talking to you while you were going through it, and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I don't know what I can do.
It's just like there's some like just having meltdowns at like 3 a.m. being like, can I even do this? Like, what were they thinking when they hired me? But then you see the art and you see it all come together, and then I finally get the proof, and I read it again, and I'm like, hey,
it's pretty good.
That looks good, and
really good, Melissa.
Thank you. And so I feel like was that moment where I was like, okay, I can do this. This is okay. Because that was my first like crisis of faith. And
we've
then
never seen something
yeah.
like that before. You had nothing to pull from. Like we had the whole time. Like that was the Rita timeline, right?
Yeah, it was meant to be the world of Rita. And we did the same thing with Zordon in I think it was 108. And so
You did that twice.
Yeah.
You're
The Zordon one, it was different. It came a little differently because it was the Vessel and Zordon, but really those are like meant to be little character pieces that give us windows in the world. They pause the story so you can understand motivation in a different way, and those are always a risk for me. I remember 108 really scared me too because we end on this huge cliffhanger in 107, and then 108 we don't do anything to push the story forward. Instead, we do it in a different way, and I was like, are people going to hate this because they're expecting answers for the other stuff? And thankfully, most people liked it. So I've been very lucky so far. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, but that's been for me. It's always truly it is a surprise every week or every month that people like the. I'm doing my best. I'm doing what I love, and I'm trying not to pay attention to anything else. But I do get nervous, and I'm always just really. I'm so thankful that the fans see the love that I have for this franchise and are on board wherever I take it.
It comes through in every page, and more importantly, every cliffhanger that I get to read. I'm just like, I have to wait another month, ready for it, but
I
truly.
come from the land of TV shows.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I have to end with something that makes you want to come back.
But it makes it that much more engaging. So thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Megan, happy to meet you. Stay tuned for more Power Rangers and Boom Studios coverage at Comics Online.